All right, so welcome. Obviously not the view we want to see here to start of the first day of the NHRA Cabaret Gyro Series season, but hey, we're here. The cars are on track today. We got one round of qualifying in, and we about got around. We got through Pro Stock Motorcycle and Pro Stock. So again, like I said in the past, watch those guys because they got their runs in today. They got both of their runs in today. But again, just a bunch of storylines to come out of this event. This is a really cool day to be back at the racetrack, to be back at the strip, to watch these guys unload, and finally answer all the long-term questions. The wait is finally over. So of course, enough of me talking about it, let's get into it. To kick off Pro Stock Motorcycle, the first thing I want to talk about is the young blood. Both NHRA and Chase Van Sant. Second and third, not in that order maybe, but again, second and third on the opening day of qualifying here for the Gatornationals. Huge deal out of there for those guys. A lot of questions were coming in with those two coming in here. Obviously, if you listen to Jack Rapello over at Cycle Jack, he can tell you all about what those guys are capable of. They obviously have the talent to be in this class, or else they wouldn't have had that right. They wouldn't have got their license in the first place. But for the opening day, for those two to be second and third is a really big deal. That is a huge up for those two as they go to start their 2023 campaign, both for White Alligator Racing and Vance and Hines. So just really cool for those guys. We'll get into the results later so you can see it, but I was really surprised by that. NHRA first ended up second on the charts in Q1, and then in Q2, Chase Van Sant jumped it up and jumped in the second and dropped Gage down to third. So obviously there's still 2 more rounds left tomorrow, but it's a really good start for those guys because they both beat Matt Smith. And you might be thinking, well, then who's the fastest? Well, that would be none other than Steve Johnson. Steve topped the charts after the first round of qualifying and then took it after the no. Gage was the fastest after the first round, and then Steve Johnson in the second, I believe. So that was a big deal for him because he went on the top end and started losing his mind when he got that 74. He talked about the fact that he didn't get a lot of testing, and I talked to him in an interview, which I'll play here in a second, but we talked about he didn't have any testing this season. He had maybe 1 test session to Gainesville, but it was a volunteer staff of 1 crew guy. So while the other teams, like Vance and Hines, are flexing about the fact that they have these massive budgets, they just debuted the Gen 3 Hayabusa body, and we have Matt Smith with the factory Suzuki backing, and he's out here flexing that he has 150 passes on that engine. And then who ends up the fastest after all that talk, after all that hype? It's Steve Johnson, and he was very adamant about the fundamentals and just what it means to have that weight off his shoulder. We asked him about that in the post-qualifying press conference. Here's what he had to say about that.
Man, I need you in my mirror in the morning when I'm shaving. It's like, that is so awesome. I love that. It really is because, you know, at the end of the day, you learn from testing. Even though it might not have shown up in Q1, Q2, both of those teams are better for doing what they're doing. We just have limited resources, and I promised my sponsors that we'll be at the racetrack. We have 1 engine this weekend, and I told my guys I wouldn't say that, but I did. But I love just letting you guys know behind the scenes. Our sport, it's so important that our sport moves forward in every single aspect. But at the same time, you can't forget the people that don't have all of the resources. And I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the sport as it moves through 5, the next 10, the next 20 years. It's got to be a diverse sport. We have women, kids, and all ethnicities, and we have such diversity, and we just cannot forget the diversity cannot stop at the dollars. We have a lot of really cool sponsors, and they want to see us win. It's not specifically a business deal, except our new sponsor, Big St. Charles, has a motorcycle dealership. You know, they want to sell motorcycles, and Suzuki wants to sell motorcycles. But you learn everything that goes on. Last night at the Hall of Fame dinner, I learned so much from that Hall of Fame dinner from these guys that used to race fuel cars. I'm like, how did you not change? How did you not tear the engine apart? We have to tear everything apart after every round. They're like, when you spin the tires all the way down the track, it doesn't load anything. We just pull the spark plugs out and look at them. I'm like, you could read the spark plugs in a fuel car in the 70s? Really? Oh yeah, all the time. I'm like, wow. For those of you who don't know, those plugs are pretty much throwaway after every run. So it's those guys, they're really successful teams. I dislike everything that Matt says usually in the media, but that's my opinion. That's my opinion. It's like and Vance and Hines, but he has 5 championships, so you know, or 6 or 12. I don't know how many he's got, but Vance and Hines, that's why our sport, again, is so diverse. Vance and Hines is totally different. Andrew brought me into his pit this weekend, showed me the new bodywork. Suzuki's going to help me pay for it and put it on our bike. I'm not sure if they're going to pay, and I'm going to put it on my bike. But the testing is extremely vital. We didn't make one pull on the dyno. Oh my God, we didn't get a lot of parts for our other engines, so it's a polar opposite, that's for sure.
And then you might be also wondering, what about Matt Smith? Where is he at? Well, he actually was in 4th, and we talked to him in the Media Day press conference yesterday, and he said that with that new body, well, with the new Suzuki factory backing, he doesn't have the V-twin buell. That is going to his wife, Angie, he is also trying to kind of bolster both of those entries so that way they can have a better chance of a Matt Smith Racing Championship. Obviously, Matt Smith is going to be the big storyline as he goes for that record 7th title. And I tried up with the Media Day. Believe it got the issues fixed. You'll probably see that video uploading either before or after this video comes out. So be sure to watch that because we got an interview with Erica Enders and Ron Capps as well. And there was a huge panel with John Force, Josh Hart, and Brittany Forrest as well, and there was a lot of information that came out of that. But Matt Smith told me that if he did not get a top 3 time after day 1, he wasn't going to be happy with it. And obviously with a 4th, maybe on the fence, maybe not. I'm not sure about that, but obviously there's a lot left to be said about what that team can do. He's not going to get the Gen 3 Hayabusa body until Chicago, so he's going to go through these first few races on the old body while Eddie Craywick is going to be using the Gen 3 Hayabusa while the rest of the Vance and Hines crew is using that body. Steve Johnson even talked about that he's going to get his own. He said that maybe Suzuki was paying for a little bit. I'm not sure about. He was a little bit adamant. He kind of backtracked and said, oh, I'm not supposed to say that. We don't exactly know where that is at yet. Pro stock. Obviously, the big story that everyone's going to talk about is Erica Enders going for the 6th championship. Of course, she ends up P1. Shocker, am I right? Who's expected that? But here's what I think is the big surprise out of that class. Camry Caruso, we talked about in the offseason, you know, in the NHRA Insider podcast, who is the one person that everybody in the series says is going to get their first Wally this season. Camry Caruso, she came out and showed that in 4th. Fastest at the end of Q1. Who really saw that coming? We keep talking about Bo Butner, the Carusos. You're talking about Eric Enders and Greg Anderson and Kyle Koretsky. And then you have Camry Caruso, who we expect maybe towards the later part of the season, maybe early on in the season, to really show form, but to be P1 after the end of Q1, drops maybe I believe P3 to P4 before her Q2 run and jumps back up to 2nd, so that's a huge bolster for her. I think she's going to have a real shot at winning this event if everything goes right, if all the parts are aligned and everything is just perfect for her. I think she has a really good chance of winning this weekend. We still have 2 more rounds of qualifying, and I think there's a lot left in that Chevy Camaro before we can really say where that car is going to be. Like I said, Eric Anderson, top of the charts. No surprise there. I'm not going to waste too much time on that. Greg Anderson, again, the one person who we really believe is going to have an opportunity to go chase down Erica for that 6th title and kind of keep that from happening. He rounds out 4th. Bo Butner was in 3rd with a 6.552. We'll talk about the times later on in the video, like I said. But again, there's so much shakeup in there with the crew, with the Quadras trying to step up their game. Obviously, you want Christian and Fernando Jr. to step up. Fernando Sr. is going to take on the more development role, so that way those 2 cars go out there and compete for those Wallies. I think there's a lot of storylines to go out there, and obviously Bo Butner the 3rd, huge shout out to him for being up there in 3rd. Obviously it was a disappointing season for him to be back in this season and start off 3rd in the standings, beating Greg Anderson, beating Kyle Koretsky. Derek Kramer is a guy we'll talk about later. He was way down on the running order. I was surprised by that. So again, huge deal over there. In Funny Car, Alex Laughlin, hey Drag Racing Central, hey Dave W, hey everybody else. For all you guys that said Alex Laughlin doesn't have a lot, maybe there's a ceiling for that team. How about this? 11th at the end of qualifying on day 1. He was the next pair to go out before the rain hit, which you're seeing right now. It's wet. I'm wet. Camera's wet. Kevin's wet. So we'll try and wrap this up. But he made the first pass, and he kept the body on, and he kept the car in one piece, and he had a pretty decent time. Obviously, a 4-second run is not desirable, but when you consider the fact that this guy has run Pro Stock, this guy has run Pro Mod, this guy has run in the No Prep Kings, he's drove everything, Top Fuel as well. To be in a Funny Car in first right now, he's 11th and beating some pretty notable names on that timing sheet. I think that's a big step up for him. I think it's a big step up for Jim Dunn. I expect some big things. I expected him to maybe improve, but we didn't get to see that. But he has 2 more runs tomorrow to improve. And I'm going to give a shout out to Sam because he's the only guy along with me that believes that car can go rounds, that car can make runs, that car is fast. Is it a championship contender? Maybe not. I will agree there's a bit of a ceiling for what that team has to offer, but I do think there's still a lot left to be said about what that Jim Dunn-Haviland car can do, because they have the money and they have the driver that has the will to want to go out there and perform at a high rate. So I think that's going to be a guy you need to watch out for. Next up, we're going to talk about Alexis Ajoria. She had one hell of a day, not in the way that anybody would want to. She came really close to hitting that right lane wall in her Q1 run. A lot of audible gasp for the media center when that happened. And then in Q2, she cranked the car so sideways I could read the door from behind her. So she had a lot going for her in that run. She had a pretty wild day, but obviously the guy with probably the big storyline of terms of not what you want to hear is Cruz Pedregon, a guy who a lot of people are saying is going to be the guy that can break into that top 3 of Hagen, Height, and Caps. Q1 hits the wall. Not a massive hit. I don't think there's a huge bit of damage to that. He damaged the exhaust on the side of the car and maybe got some damage to the back corner of the body. But other than that, the car was fine. He got away lucky with that, and it was lucky for him. It was after the top end. So he is in the show going into Sunday. Obviously, I think it doesn't even matter. I think there's only a 16-car field anyways. But he got away very lucky with that. That car could have ended a lot worse. I noticed that in testing this weekend is the fact that a lot of cars had some very close calls. J.R. Todd almost hit it. Paul Lee did hit it. Cruz Pedregon had I just blew into the mic, sorry. Paul Lee did hit it, and Cruz Pedregon had a couple close calls too, and then his luck ran out when he did scrape that wall. So he's going to come back tomorrow. I think he's going to be swinging for the fences because he has a lot left to prove to really go out there and prove his rankings in terms for Sunday. I think there's a lot left in that Snap-on Dodge Charger or Challenger. I get confused with those cars, but I think there's a lot left to prove for that Snap-on team, and I think they're going to come out swinging tomorrow. And then to end things off, obviously, the kings of the drag racing world, Top Fuel. Doug Coletta was a guy that a lot of people looked at coming into this weekend saying that guy has someone you need to watch out for. Disappointing season all across the board for Coletta. J.R. Todd improved. Sean Langdon, I think, had a better bit of a run. I think he might have smoked the tires, so he has some stuff to improve for tomorrow. But Doug Coletta, how about this? Currently sits second after because of the fact that Q2 rained out. He sits second in the Top Fuel ranks going into tomorrow. He had a 3.724 at 327 miles an hour. Currently sits second. So that car did improve. The new cambio body, maybe that's not the magical touch, but it was an improvement. You got to believe Alan Johnson had a reason to want to put that canopy on that car because nobody else on the team is doing it. Clay Milliken, we talked about it. Everybody talks about it. Rick Ware Racing. That guy has a knack. I don't know what it is about Rick Ware, but he has a way to find these teams that can perform, that has the capability, that has the talent, that has the power to want to go out there and run rounds and go get win lights. And then he finds these teams and gives them the money, gives them the push that they need. He did it with Del Coyne and IndyCar. Go look at how that team's doing. That was a mid-pack team that had maybe some spurts of brilliance, and then they get Nurtec on board, and then they get Roman Grosjean and Takuma Sato to go run that car when that was a pay driver car for a long time. So there's a Gator come rapping. So there's a lot to be left to prove in that car. He has a big. What are you going to do? So, there's a lot to be said with what that car is capable of doing. I think that that team is going to do a lot. A lot of people are saying that he's a dark horse to pick. I know DJ said that he might have a good chance of winning the Top Fuel call-out tomorrow. Woo! This is going off the rails. Going into tomorrow, I think Clay has a really good shot. Maybe not to win this weekend. I don't see him make. I think maybe there's a lot of cobwebs because the thing too about that team that I forgot because of all the chaos going around me. I love NHRA, is the fact that they packed up that team from their Midwest shop where Doug Stringer had it set up over there in, I believe, Illinois and the Tennessee area. And they picked up that team and moved it across the country over onto the East Coast. And they have that team now in the same shop where the LMP2 car is for their IMSA team. And they now have not just a new chassis, not just a new engine. They got new wheels. They got new electronics. That is a brand new off-the-showroom car. That is an entirely brand new car that they brought here. They did testing here. And like I said, Clay shut the car off at 900 feet and drove it to a 368. That car has power. That car has speed. That car is going to be a threat come this season. Maybe at Gainesville, I don't know. It certainly wouldn't surprise me, but I just don't see it. Arizona is a track that he is very, very, very talented at. He made the finals there last year. It was the only final he made. He lost to Mike Salinas. I think that is where you're going to see this Parts Plus Biohaven 51 Top Fuel dragster come to shine, and I think that's going to be where they really bring the power. And he also now, coming into tomorrow, has the deal going on with the Pep Boys All-Star Call-Out where he's going to take on Brittany Forbes. We'll talk about that here in a minute. It's going to start raining, so I need to speed this up here a bit so that way we don't burn this camera part. But there's so many storylines going in here. This has been such a cool day. Let's get into the times coming after this event. Alright, so we had to go and take cover because the rain got really bad. So the Steve Torrance crew already left, so we went and hid in their trailer. So Steve, if any of you guys are watching this, I want to apologize for intruding on your house. But this weather is what Steve taught us this week. It's wapijow. So we had to go and hide because the weather got really bad. So let's jump into qualifying real quick. It's supposed to get even worse. So Steve Johnson, obviously, we talked about top of the charts in qualifying with a 6.746. He was very ecstatic about that run. Sitting in second course, Chase Van Stay with a 7.47. Gage Hero was a 7.49. We talked about Matt Smith, kind of the fall he had. And he dropped to fourth. We talked about the fact that he's not going to be happy about that, so he's going to have some work to do tomorrow. Eddie Krayrick, one of the championship contenders that we were looking at with a 6.803, currently sits seventh. But then you have guys like Mark Ingerson sitting back there in 11th. Joey Gladstone, one of the guys that people are really looking forward to as a championship contender, he sits 13th. Hector Ana Jr., he won 2 of the last 3 events last season. He currently sits in the 15th spot with Ron Tornow, obviously the guy who sent Angel Sempe famously at the U.S. Nationals packing after round 1. Currently is the last car on the bubble. We have Chris Bostick with a 7.066 and 17th, Malcolm Phillips with a 7.098 and 18th, and then Lance Bonham, probably not butcher that name, with a 7.401 sitting in 19th. So that is your Pro Stock field. Over in Pro Stock, we talked about this already. Eric Enders, of course, to no one's surprise, sitting at the top of the board. Cameron Caruso, though, sitting second. Bill Butner sits in third. Greg Anderson in fourth. The Quadra brothers are currently with Christian sitting in 6th. You have Fernando Sr. sitting in, I believe that is 9th, and Fernando Quadra Jr. sitting in 12th. So here is those Quadra family is having a pretty good weekend so far. Obviously, Jr. wants to improve a little bit. He's going to have 2 more chances tomorrow to get that done. Derek Kramer and Matt Harford are 2 people that I'm very surprised by. Derek Kramer sitting in the 15th position with a 5.89, and Hartford with a 5.90. So now what they want to do, how about Chris, I'm going to say how about them. Chris McGahey is the first car out of the show with a 5.92. That's not going to cut it for him. He's currently the first car out. Alan Brzezinski in 18th with a 6.20. And then Shane Tucker making his return to NHRA Pro Stock. Obviously, got to get them cobwebs off as here in the NHRA. He has 2 more chances tomorrow. I think he actually wasn't able to make a Q2 run. I think they actually just pushed him down the racetrack and got him off and went to the next pair. I think he had an issue beforehand. In Funny Car, Bob Tasca III, he introduced that new PPG body onto the Funny Car for that Motorcraft team. So he has a brand new, beautiful body. It's what we've seen a lot of times in IndyCar. We've seen it in the NASCAR world as well. He currently sits on top of the charts with 388. John Force talked about he's trying to return to form to watch his grandson play hockey over the winter. He's going to try and make this big comeback because he kind of lit that fire back under him to want to compete at a high level again. It's been 10 years since John Force won a Funny Car World title, so I think that's going to be something you need to watch out for. J.R. Todd, again, we talked about the Coletta Cam, trying to improve all around. J.R. Todd currently, after day 1, sits 3rd. Matt Hagan, Robert Height, and Ron Capps, no one's surprised. 4th, 5th, and 6th. You can't get those guys separate each other, even if you put a gun to their head. They are just going to stick to each other like glue. Cruz Pedregon, again, he hit the wall. He ends up in 7th. So he got very lucky with that because the fact he hit the wall after the 1,000-foot mark. So he got very lucky with that position. And then all the way down in 15th is Alexa DeJoria with a 4.763. She had 2 very close calls. She is lucky she got away with that car because that car should have smacked the wall on Q1. I am not kidding. If you watch on the Fox broadcast, you'll see it. That car is what Steve Johnson, or about Steve Torrance taught us this week, is what we call wapijow, because that car was everywhere but straight on the racetrack. And then rounding out on top fuel, I mean, are we surprised at this point? Should anyone really be surprised anymore? Brittany Ford sitting on the top of the charts. She had one of the top 5 times, and I believe one of the top 5 records in speed, I believe, in the history of NHRA. She bumped one of her own times to do it. She sits on top of the charts with a 3.699. Doug Coletta, we talked about the Coletta Camp winning the proof. Currently sits second with a 723. Leah Pruitt in third with a 724. And then Clay Milliken, I said he was in third, he dropped to 4. He was actually in 4 with a 728. Steve Torrance looking to get back to form. We're hiding in his in his garage stall right now, so luckily they're gone. He currently sits in the 6th position with a 735 as he looks to go back-to-back and win the Top Fuel call-out tomorrow. Tony Schumacher, one of those guys that I'm looking at as a perennial championship favorite. He's been very excited for the season. I might try and get a word with him tomorrow. He is someone that I'm looking out for, and right now, with 1 Q run in, he currently sits in 9th. Scott Palmer in the 10th position. How about this? Keith Mert from Paducah, Kentucky. Shout out to Cole Fraley. That guy does not make a lot of starts this season. He currently sits 11th, so he's in a very good spot going into tomorrow. Then you got Spencer Matzi in 12th. Sean Langdon had a bad run. He currently sits in 13th. You got Justin Ashley, Mike Smith, and Doug Foley. All of them weren't able to complete a run, so they sit down at the bottom of the charts. Overall, what a return to drag racing we have had today. This has been a really, really fun day. This has been a really exciting day. I am excited to get back to the racetrack tomorrow and be able to walk around these pits again and go meet people and go do interviews and see some of you guys that might be watching this channel. If you do see me around the pits, say hi to me, shout me out, because obviously without you guys, we wouldn't be here right now. So big shout out to you guys for supporting this channel as much as you guys do. We have a small channel, but it is growing really fastly, so I do appreciate it. Again, I said it once in the one video that I didn't upload. Follow me on social medias. Twitter, I'm doing full updates on there. Follow me on Facebook, follow me on Instagram, and now follow me on TikTok. I'm on all those platforms. I'm posting as much as I can in those platforms. Twitter is the main one I'm posting on, so go follow me there if you want to keep up with what I'm doing and what content I'm making. Subscribe to the channel. Share it so that way more people are seeing this and we can get a big, wider audience for drag racing, because I do believe with where the sport is at right now, with the direction that they're heading, I think they're on the cusp of having a really big year for themselves. I think this is going to be a real pivotal moment in the direction of where the series is going to head, and I think this is going to be a season that you can't afford to miss, especially after what we saw today. And how can I forget this? I need to bust this out again, the Top Fuel call-out. I'll go through that real quick, and then we'll move on. So, obviously, in the Top Fuel call-out, the thing I'm looking at the most right now is Brittany Forrest. She called out the last seed, Clay Milliken, and I'll be honest with you, that is not a car I would have called out. We saw it right now. 4th fastest. He is right on her. That team is fast. That team is competitive, and so much so that Clay put $1,000 side bid on that race. That is how confident he is in that. Steve Torrance called out Doug Coletta. Doug Coletta right now the 2nd fastest car on the track. Justin Ashley called out Mike Salinas, and then of course when you run out of options, you have Austin Prock versus Josh Hart. So that is going to be your top 8 in the Top Fuel call out presented by Pep Boys. That's going to take place tomorrow. This is going to be a very, very, very exciting race to get to watch. I'm excited to see how that all plays out. Again, follow me on all social medias, follow me on everywhere, subscribe to the channel, share it so that way more people can see this content and be able to enjoy drag racing, so that way we can pack the grandstands. More so today. That's the last thing I want to talk about. Oh my God, Gainesville, you guys show up and show up big every time. I heard about it. You guys were packing 8 rows deep before I came here in the past, and you guys proved it on a Friday afternoon. You guys filled the grandstand. So huge shout out to the Gainesville faithful. To the people who questioned whether or not NHRA should have made the move and had to start here, that went out the window immediately when in Sportsman you had a full grandstands. So big shout out to the Gainesville fans, to the NHRA fans who showed up this weekend and showed up big, because this is an incredible day to see the turnout, especially to those top row fans who try to stick out through the rain. Shout out to you guys. So again, social media, follow me in there, share this video so that way people see it, like it, comment it so that way it boosts, and then again, support any way you can. Tell your friends, drag them out of the house and get into a drag race, because this is one of the best sports right now in the world and you do not want to miss it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until I see you next time, this has been Mighty Mac, and I will see you later.